Today we're going to be doing an install on our 4th Gen 4Runner bumper. We sell a ton of these. This is one of our very first bumpers we ever did. I think it was probably number 3 that we ever designed. We've added a ton of stuff to it, but to start off with, our 4th Gen market is literally, I want to go have fun. This is what I got. How do I make it work better? These rigs are fun to drive and handle life. And they'll also get you back and forth to work, as long as you don't give it too much skinny pedal over the weekend. So the first thing we're gonna look at on our 4th Gen bumper is lighting mounts, winch mounts, and basically how it all kind of comes together and why. So to start off with, we have our lighting mounts. These slotted mounts right here, you can put small lights up to the front, big lights in the back. You can move them around wherever you want, as long as they fit in the holes. These also serve as a backup gusset to the center section. This top plate also works as a backup gusset to the center section. Below it, we have a backup gusset for the lower bar, and then we have a gusset that ties that in to the frame mount. We gusset the inside of it, the outside of it. We make sure these bumpers aren't just a face with some tubing on it. As we move along on the bumper, this is where your winch is gonna mount from the bottom. You just basically run your bolts through the bottom. This is where your winch control box would mount. And then you have your 20-inch light bar mount. We're gonna send you along extra brackets, little L brackets, that will work with multitudes of different 20-inch light bars to be able to mount it a little bit in, a little bit out, whatever works to be able to clearance through the winch and the light bar at the same time. This is made to take a beating. We expect it's probably going to be used that way. So to get moving forward, we'll start working on getting this thing mounted to the rig. So today, we're not putting a winch in it, we're not putting lights in it. We're just mounting a bumper. We're going to show you our heavy duty frame plates welded on, our side frame mounts bolted together, sandwiching everything, and try to give you a good overview of how this bumper goes. All right, so our little 4th Gen here that we're working on, it still has a fender liner on the passenger side, so we're going to show you how that comes off. We basically need to disconnect it from the front bumper, so when we pull the skin off, we're not pulling the fender liner out with it. So we start with a 10mm socket, pretty loose. They're just going through plastic, so nothing crazy. You got the one right here. You got 3 down here that you're gonna hit. And while you're down here, might as well just do a little traveling. They're not super happy, but they're coming out. I don't think that one matters anymore. So yeah, that's everything. See, the plastic's pretty loose at this point. So now we'll pull off we gotta unhook these lights. So we'll unhook these lights and then we'll pull this bumper off. Before you pull your bumper off, you wanna look in here and these should just unscrew, bulb and everything. All right, so that's a fog. We'll hook up a set of pods to that same circuit. If it's still good, it may not still be good, who knows. And then we'll hook in our turn signals to this circuit. I'm gonna show you some cool options for turn signals while we're doing this. All right, so that takes care of that. She's about ready to pull. So this little guy here, we just get it popped up. And then our whole bumper is going to come off after the middle one comes up. So that takes care of it. All right, so when we were taking the front cover off, we obviously got the bolts around by the fender liners. And then we got the bolts off the bottom. But then we have these little tabs up just underneath the headlight. You got this guy, It sits down, you just pop it up, takes the tension off of it, and it'll be one here, one in the middle, one on the other side. So those you're gonna wanna take those off, and then your whole bumper cover is gonna come off. You pretty much got everything you need at that point. So your reminder is, and actually one of our plugs fell off. This one is for your fog lamps. This is gonna be your turn signal. We're gonna show you a cool way to do turn signals. There's a few options people have been using. There's some stuff you can buy that has the resistor in it, or you can use dots and add a resistor into your signal switch. Just a few things that will help make your life easier when you go to do turn signals. So same thing, there's these little rubber things right here. Divert the air for you. So we're gonna pop those out. So those are out of your way. So this truck, we're just finding out in real time, this truck's been in an accident. So frame plate's bent right here. And then if you can catch around the backside there, it's also all jacked right here. This is all broken. So obviously when you're looking for a rig, you're not really catching little hidden things that are up underneath of everything that you're normally not going to be ready for. Looks like they got some caulking on there to hold it together. So we're going to fix this problem by putting on some of our heavy duty frame plates, and that should alleviate any issues that we might have with that situation right there. All right, so first things first, take the crash bar off. 14 millimeter socket. We're dealing with a 20-year-old vehicle here, so you're going to have a little bit of rust, a little bit of problems. Crash bars off. All right, so you're going to pull all your extension bolts. You're going to pull off. These studs shouldn't spin in here. So all you should have to do is just pop them off there. If you are using your stock frame plates, you don't need these outside ones anymore, but you're going to want to probably keep that inside one. Normally your bumper would bolt to these frame plates if you want. We're also sending along heavy duty frame plates, but this truck's been in a wreck. This stud didn't move. That stud we couldn't get the bolt off or the nut off of. And then this one over here has literally been ripped almost halfway off. So there's really no way, no studs to knock out. But I'll show you on this one. You catch the stud. So if you go to put the bumper on and you want to keep your stock ones, they're not damaged like this. You just take the stud on the outside 3. You just whack it and it comes right out. So for our application, we're going to cut these off and weld on some quarter inch ones. Those 1/4 inch ones come with every bumper we send. You don't have to ask for them. We're going to send them. If you use them, you use them. If you don't, then I guess you can decide when you want to use them if you end up tearing these guys up. So we're going to cut this frame rail or frame mount off the end of the frame rail. We're going to use this Sawzall. A bimetal blade works really well. It's a little safer than using the cutoff wheel. Cutoff wheel is my favorite, but this is a little more family friendly, let's put it that way. So we just come in as tight as we can. So as you can tell, when we cut, we pretty much cut right to the edge, the back edge of the flat plate. So we even caught a little bit of weld there. It might have been a little quicker and a little easier if I'd have scooted in a little, but as much as I can get, I'd rather have. And then if I don't need it, I can get rid of it later. So we're gonna mount our plate right to the front of this guy. Just gotta get this bent up one off the driver's side and we should be good to go. I'm gonna keep the rig a little low so we can kind of show you something. So if you look right here, this guy right here, that rip right there, that's your weld. That's the only thing holding that thing to the front of the rig. That's the reason we use side frame brackets. It's a thinner piece of material than what we'd prefer to have there, but it's also just a crash bar mount. So when we're mounting bumpers to it, we've got to be really aware of the fact this isn't made to be yanked on and pulled on. So adding the heavy duty frame mounts makes a huge difference on how strong this is. You can get a complete weld all the way around it. It's more than twice as thick, and you have the side frame brackets that sandwich everything together. It ties this small section of frame into this larger cross member section of frame. Makes a huge difference on how strong these are when you're pulling on them, moving them around. All right, so this one's a little harder to be careful with because we got this air conditioning line right here. So as you're coming through with your saw, you don't want to catch that, you don't want to nick that. It'll cost you not just a little AC line, but a full recharge. Most likely someone's gonna have to add oil to your compressor, etc., all that stuff. So just be real careful of this. Don't take it off and don't nick it with the saw. We're gonna clean up around it and get our new frame mounts mounted on. So I'm gonna clean up a surface about a 1/2 inch back all the way around this frame rail, this frame horn, so that when we go to weld, we're not welding on paint or rust or any kind of impurities. We get a good solid weld on here. All right. So something that just occurred to me because of the age of this rig and how old a lot of the holes are and stuff, we have side frame brackets that are going to bolt to this hole right here and this one down here. So we're going to go ahead and give it a little bit of the magic, the WD-40. So that way it can kind of soak in while we're working on the rest of these problems we're dealing with. So that way when we get to the end of the bumper install, hopefully a lot of this rust is softened up and we're not trying to drive through it. So we got these little plastic pieces that the bumper cover used to clip into. So we're gonna pop these out. It's a 10 millimeter, should be this. And then just throw a little, oh, hold on. And then that one, so that's 2 of them. Pop it out, good to go. We got these little plastic pieces that held the top of the bumper cover in. One of our bolts is already missing here, but we have one here and one here. And then we're good to go. So we're gonna cut off this tab right here to keep it from hitting the back main tube on the bumper. You can, if you want to, just fold it over. We're just gonna choose to cut it off. We're really never gonna go back to stock with this rig, so no real reason to keep a tab that we're never gonna use again. Just leave the spot where the fender bolt's on. You have a fender bolt and a fender bolt. Make sure we're not cutting anything off of that. So then we're gonna cut off this middle one. When we do go to put a winch on this rig, We don't want this in the way of the winch drum, so we're just gonna get rid of it now so we're not in there digging around when we go to put the winch on. So the easiest way that we found to mount the frame mounts where you want them, get the bumper lined up perfectly the way you want it, is to mount the frame mounts to the bumper and then hold the bumper in place and get the frame mounts tacked to the frame. So we're gonna have Jacob here go ahead and get them set. Get the nuts and washers on them all. Okay, so while Jacob puts the one on the other side, I'm gonna show you how we're gonna tighten up this side. So we'll get it kind of closed. Try to line it all up. Gives you as much adjustability as possible. So frame plates are where we would want them on the bumper. Perfectly nominal. Basically plenty of adjustability on there. Then we're gonna level off the rig, bring the bumper up to the rig, line everything up, and then tack the corners of the frame rails to the frame plates, take the bumper off of it, and weld everything out. So we're gonna line the bumper up with the rig where we want it, exactly where we want it. We may go a little higher, clear the gap just a tiny bit, and then we are gonna get tack welds to the frame rails, to our new mounting plates, with the bumper exactly lined up the way we want it. All right, so I get a lot of questions as to why there's a gap. Obviously, we made this gap a little tighter because we're going to be able to adjust the bumper up and down. But you need at least a 1/2 inch to 3/4 gap, depending on how extreme you go when you're out playing, because this steel bumper is mounted to the frame. The body is mounted on rubber bushings also to the frame. So the body's able to flex around, whereas the steel bumper no longer flexes around. So you just got to make sure, no matter what you do, if you're mounting your own plates, don't jam this thing hard up against your fenders because it's going to eat at them anytime you're out, and you're going to get rubbed through on your finish. You're going to get rust. You're going to get bent parts. So just be aware of that. So when you're welding something onto your rig, you're going to be grounding to the rig, right? The best thing you can possibly do is ground directly to the part you're welding. If in case you ground somewhere else and your ground isn't doing very well or it's not connecting through, the ground is going to chase anywhere it can. It'll head through your wiring harness, it'll get into your computer, it'll go wherever it's got to go to get that power to the weld. So if you can, like I said, ground directly to the part you're welding to, so that way you don't cause yourself problems that you can't figure out later on, little gremlins that are going to start giving you trouble, or maybe the rig doesn't even start. It's always very important to have somebody do this that's used to working on and welding on vehicles, so that way mistakes like that don't cost you an entire computer system or a harness or anything else. All right, so we're getting the bumper where we like the lines on it to the rig. And then we're going to tack the bottom corners of the frame mounts to the bottom of the frame and adjust our tilt on our bumper after we do that. So go ahead and tack that. So on this frame mount, I've already welded the bottom of it. I'm gonna get a good solid tack on the 2 top corners and then the 2 top corners on the other side. So that way when we pull the bumper off and we go to weld, it doesn't shrink up and change our angle and our gap that we have. Like I said before, the driver's side of this thing was mangled pretty good. So there is a gap on that side, and when you weld the gap shut, it likes to shrink down afterwards, which will totally change the fitment point on the bumper once the weld shrinks. All right, so at this point we got the plates tacked on, the bottom of them are welded to hold them still. The top corners are tacked to keep them from pushing in when we weld it out. So we're gonna pull the bumper out of our way because it's a pain to try and weld around all that stuff down there, bolts and bumper. And then we'll finish burning the plates on and see how we look. All right, so the plates are all welded out. They've cooled off enough. You can touch them, just barely. I threw some paint on them. I welded all the way around the entire plate on this thing. So we shouldn't have any reason or issue that this 1/4 inch is gonna come off of this thing. So plates is welded. Everything's painted, bare metal. We also had this piece that we cut off, so I painted the end of that. We had the center piece that we cut off, so I painted that. You know, just down the line. This got some paint on it. No reason to add more reasons for this poor little guy to rust. It's been around 20 years. Show it as much love as we can while we're mounting a new bumper to it, because we're gonna make it into a pretty baby, you know? Nice trail rig. I'm gonna roll this little guy right on up to where she's flat. Boom. A little off on one side. So the final move here is going to be to mount the bumper to the frame plates. So we're going to get that on there. I'm going to grab our frame support brackets and bolts for that, and we're going to get those started on here too. We have these side frame brackets we provide. This guy here with the notch on it overlaps. So when you go to put it on, you're dropping in like this, and then you start putting in your bolts, and you get all your bolts in. We have metric. Start working on these. All right, so that's your configuration. This is your outside bracket. The one that goes to the front is your inside bracket. Everything goes. Still room to move around if you need to. You got to adjust anything. You can adjust your bumper. All right. We will get the other side on, and then we'll come back in here and we're going to tighten everything all at once. We want to make sure the bumper's sitting where we want it before we just start cinching bolts down. So both sides are bolted, everything's bolted, just everything's still real loose. So I'm gonna start off with, we had talked earlier about the holes on this frame. They are old. They never had anything in them. So we'll do a little gentle work in on that. Just to make sure we're not tearing the threads up. Like I said, this top hole might have been used at some point along the way, but the bottom hole definitely has never seen a bolt. I have those bolts semi-loosened up, so we're not gonna fight them at the end here. And I want my bumper to be kind of where final resting place is. So I scoot it around a little bit. Any one of them's fine, doesn't matter. Start cinching them down. So that's all in. That's in. Oh, I didn't mention 13 millimeter. $19 millimeter. These bolts right here, use a 14 millimeter on, just like the stuff you pulled off. All right, just like the other side. I'll go too far overboard with that one. Which looks good. That's all of it mounted. So I'm gonna tuck all this stuff back. Currently don't need it. Just set it up here for a moment until we get to the part where we wire in turn signals and fog lamps directly to the stock harness. Let's show you real quick how we're going to do the fender liner on this. And this is just a basic follow of what's here. All right, so fender liner here, she's flapping around. This side's a little different than the other side, but we don't have one on the other side, so I'm just going to show you on this side. So I start right here in this little nook and come down towards the corner of this and make sure I'm not cutting anything that I shouldn't. And then there's fender liner. It's not the most pretty thing in the world, but it'll keep the splash off of stuff and do the job. We'll get you guys, we got some Snowbound Customs reservoirs. We're gonna go ahead and replace this at some point. We'll get a video up for that. Help our friends out over at Snowbound Customs, move a little bit more of that beautiful product that they make. That'll relocate this up inside the hood area. There's also another way to do this where you buy a little Dorman box, about 20 bucks, drill a hole in it, put it up here, and then you can plug your washer right into it. We can show you how to do that too. There's lots of videos on YouTube about that one though. So it should be pretty much an easy one to search for if you want to. This fender liner, we're gonna go ahead and pop a little drill hole in it here, tie it off to the reservoir for now. Most likely once the reservoir is gone, this section of the fender liner, we're not gonna keep it anymore anyways. There's not gonna be really anything to protect. So, but for now, we'll tie it off there, keep it safe. All right, bumper's installed. Everything went really well. We did do heavy duty frame mounts on this one because of the damage to the frame. the frame mount from the original. So we basically have gone full heavy duty frame mounts, side frame brackets, everything's situated, everything's done. We did tighten up a few things here and there that we really liked. This is honestly a really good way for you to fit your bumper up the way you want it to look. One thing I want to point out, the drastic difference in tire clearance in this area. These are 35 1250 17s. We literally stuffed them on this rig and it was rubbing the front, the whole bumper, and the back. Still is rubbing in the back. We'll probably do a body mount relocation kit on this thing to get it to not rub in the back anymore. But this is it. This takes care of any problems you're gonna have in this area and gets rid of all the old plastic off the front end.